Hi all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. Police in Grand Rapids, Michigan are investigating a string of murders that they say took place within hours of each other and within the same neighborhood on November 6th of 2023. Two bodies were found and a third man was murdered just as police were wrapping up at the first two crime scenes, all within roughly a quarter mile of one another. And as if that wasn't mysterious enough, a small child was found just a mile away from the first crime scene, wandering all alone, covered in blood. Police had a hell of a day in Grand Rapids as the 911 calls kept coming in, calling them from crime scene to crime scene with many questions but no answers. And although they believe all three murders to be related, they don't yet know how. Because the deaths are shrouded in mystery, so they have no description of a suspect or suspects to provide to the public. The chief of police has suggested a number of scenarios that may have taken place: a possible gang hit, retaliation, a kidnapping. But he admits he has no evidence leading to any of those scenarios yet. Nor do they have any leads as to who is behind the murders. Three mysterious deaths, three bodies found in the streets of the same neighborhood, all within hours of each other. Then, nothing. And days later, still no description of a suspect or person of interest. No further details about the murders or how the bodies ended up where they were found. And police still have not talked about whether or not they found evidence that the murders were actually connected and not just random. Other than they believe the first man and woman found were dating. Could they be hunting a serial killer? Here's how it all unfolded. Shortly after 10:30 a.m., police received a 911 call about a body found in the street on Melville Street Southeast. When police responded to the scene, they found a man deceased and covered in blood. As they began to investigate, they received a second 911 call around 11:10 a.m. about a second body found in the road about a quarter of a mile away on the same street. When they responded to the second scene, they found the body of a deceased woman, also covered in blood. Police said they initially thought the two victims had been shot, but after canvassing the homes near where the bodies were found, everyone they talked to said they never heard any gunshots. In fact, police couldn't find anybody who heard anything at either scene prior to the bodies being found, which led police to believe that maybe the victims weren't murdered where they were found, but they were left there, in the street. This was the press briefing held by the chief of police after the first two bodies were found.
We got a 911 call about 45 minutes ago of two individuals laying in the street with blood on their faces. Officers responded. What we have now is we have two deceased individuals. One of them is an adult. The other one we're trying to make a judgment on. We don't have identifications on them. Working feverishly, we're looking to talk to any witnesses that we can. We've got a lot of detectives out here, a lot of police officers going to door. If anybody has any video surveillance or any information on this, we have two dead bodies in the street, so we have an absolute tragedy on our hands.
Is there a third scene? We'd heard there a report of a possible third scene. Is that the case? Is that connected?
There was an issue on Evergreen with a man with a gun. We've determined that's totally unrelated. But what we have is at about Horton and Melville, we have one body literally in the middle of the street, and then subsequently a few blocks away, Melville and Francis, another individual deceased in the middle of the street. So as of this time, we're putting the pieces together. We've got a lot of support from the community. A lot of the neighbors have come out, and they want to help us, and that's what we need.
Chief, do we believe this was a moving shooting, people on foot, in vehicles?
Unfortunately, I'm not even at the point yet that I'm going to be able to say that it was a shooting. We have, if I had to bet on it, I'm guessing that's the case. But at this point in time, we're not even to that point yet. What I can say is that we have two, tragically, we have two bloody bodies in the street, and we don't have an explanation for it.
Can you talk about the area of it being targeted? Some neighbors said that they didn't hear anything, and they don't know if they know the individuals. Is this a targeted area? Is this a random act?
I've been up and down the street myself talking to neighbors. Is not an immediate feeling that anyone has an explanation for us, which a lot of times we'll go to a scene and individuals will be streaming out saying, I know that individual, I know what the conflict is, I know what's going on. That hasn't been the case here. So really at this point in time, it really is a mystery where we have two bodies on the street and the neighborhood is kind of throwing their hands up saying we don't know what's going on either. But I do want to be thankful because a lot of neighbors have come out in support and asked what they can do to help for this tragedy.
I know it's early investigation suspects. Do you have any leads on that at this point?
We don't have any specific information I can share at this time. I will say I don't believe we are to the point where we have a suspect, but I think that with this big of a crime scene, it's broad daylight with this many people out and about. I think that we should be able to get the cooperation that we need from the citizens, the people in Grand Rapids, to help us out, and hopefully we develop a suspect very quickly.
Do you believe there's a reason for people to be on the lookout for anything right now, or is...
From the preliminary basis of this information, so I was on the phone with GRPS security. We were talking about whether or not a school lockdown was necessary, and this appears to be very targeted, very personal, and I don't believe it's random in nature, and I don't believe that anybody else has a fear, anything to be fearful of.
Were there any weapons found at either scene?
I'm not at the point where I can even tell you that yet.
Chief, about how many blocks does this span? It seems pretty...
Yeah, we've got a crime scene that goes, I would say, about 4 total blocks. Yeah, it's a long way between where the two bodies were located, and as you know, if it was whether an individual was on foot, in a vehicle, since we believe those two killings are connected, that's a long space that my officers are canvassing, that they're looking for forensic evidence and things like that. So this is a very large crime scene.
And talk about, you just said it's in broad daylight. People are outside.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to the neighbors who are saying, hey, this is my block. This doesn't happen often.
Well, I'm picking up on that. That's exactly what if you guys look down that block, you'll see people are on their porch. People are talking to the police. They came out. This is not something that this neighborhood's going to tolerate. This is not something that anyone should ever tolerate. And so I'm thankful for the support of the neighbors coming out and talking to us. And I know they want answers. Just as I was on my way walking here, somebody from a porch yelled, "You got to find this out. You got to find this out." They care. And we care, and I think with everyone's help, we will be able to put this together and bring some justice for these two individuals who we haven't even identified at this point yet. But I can say that whatever answer that we're going to come to a conclusion, why these two people were murdered, I don't think it's going to make sense to either me or you.
And how do you feel knowing that neighbors are coming out and saying, hey, not on this block?
I feel good. We have seen crime trend down in the city this year. That's going to be no comfort to the loved ones of these two individuals who were murdered today. But I never want Grand Rapids to be the place that you become numb to violence. I want the people to be outraged by this. I'm outraged by this, and I know this block is outraged by this neighborhood, and I hope we never get to the point where this is the normal.
You said that at this point, as this was reported as a shooting investigation, did anyone hear gunshots, or you've been able to gather any information like that?
You know what? Pun not intended, I jumped the gun on saying it was a shooting investigation. We're not even to that point now. Because of the blood, because of there's some obvious injuries to the body, we went forward and said that it was likely a shooting investigation, but we're going to backtrack on that and say it is a murder investigation. But as far as the manner of killing, we're not to the point yet. And the medical examiner's on their way out. We'll get those answers, but we don't have them yet.
You never called this in? Was it just bystanders or someone just walking down the street?
Yeah, we got several 911 calls, and the 911 calls were individuals in the street bloody is what it was. There was not a call of a shooting, a stabbing, anything like that. So it really is one of those things that from the beginning, it's a mystery. I think that we will be able to put it together and get some answers soon. I just don't have them yet.
What can people do to help?
This is, as we said, a very large crime scene. If you live in this neighborhood, if you have information about this, please come forward. Call. If you don't want to come forward to the police department, go through Silent Observer, either their website, their text line, their phone number, and get that information to us so that we can bring justice for the families of these two individuals.
Is there a third location? I heard.
You missed the beginning. There was an incident with an armed individual over on Evergreen, which has since resolved. We've determined it is not related to this incident.
And there are still police out here. About how long should people avoid this area?
I would say avoid it for another 3 hours or so, as there is a extensive crime scene. We do have to wait for the medical examination. We have a lot of evidence. We have a lot of canvassing to take place. So I would think 3 hours is probably a good estimate. I appreciate you guys taking the time to come down here.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
What police did not share during this briefing, and kept held close to their vests, was an even more bizarre and terrifying 911 call that came in while they were investigating the first two crime scenes. A toddler boy, just shy of 3 years old, was found wandering alone, covered in blood, a mile away from the crime scenes. When police announced that the child was connected to the investigation, they said he was covered in blood but not injured, and they found he was the son of the man found dead in the street. But he was found a mile away from where his father's body was left. I don't think a toddler could walk a mile alone in a city without being spotted by someone, and he certainly couldn't cross streets by himself. So, he must have also been left where they found him, by the same person or people who disposed of his father's body and the woman's body that was found. So whoever had the two bodies and the child in the car scattered them throughout the city. Thank God the child was still alive and unharmed. But since he was covered in blood that was not his own, police said more than likely he witnessed his father's murder. How incredibly horrible. In the hours following finding the bodies and the toddler, police continued their investigation, and news crews reported from the separate crime scenes. Then, around 4 p.m., while a news crew was reporting from the area where the woman was found, gunshots rang out, and more 911 calls. A third victim, another man, was found murdered, literally houses away from where one of the first bodies was located.
Even before this third body found here on Horton, as I was reporting live at 4 p.m., just after we heard what sure sounded to be like multiple gunshots just down the way. When talking about the two bodies found earlier, we said this is not a typical death investigation by any measure, and for the reasons that nobody heard any gunshots or a fight outside in the neighborhood before those bodies were discovered. And we did find a neighbor who believes she caught a suspect vehicle on camera, which we'll show you here in a second. But this deadly shooting, those two bodies, still looking into all of this, but a neighborhood left on edge.
And Michael, I'm wondering about having heard those shots fired. Can you give us an idea of where you are? Because as far as we know, where the chief was talking when we started this show, that was close to where the gunshots that you heard happened?
Not exactly, Josh. So it is a very confusing scene in that it goes several blocks in every direction. So where the chief was speaking was actually about a block east removed from Horton. Horton is where that first initial body was, that young man was found, just about 3 blocks south and then 2 blocks east. On Melville is where the woman was found. That's about where we were going live when we heard several shots, 4 or 5, maybe one after another. My photographer, Mike Powers, said, "What was that? Was that gunshots?" To me, it sounded like it was a hammer or something, somebody working. 30 seconds later, we've got the cruisers driving by. It's about 3 blocks away from where we heard those shots.
All right, Michael, thank you for that update. Clearly, still a developing situation. We'll check back in with him at some point. We also have our own Jamie Sherrod, who's out there. She was sent out there in response to the second round of gunshots that Michael just explained that he heard while he was on scene looking into that first incident. So we will check in with her at some point in the show as well.
It was interesting to listen to the chief talk about this because he said people who were out there could see that there were shell casings on the ground. So that indicated to them that there was in fact a shooting out there, and that the police officer in him the professional opinion that he has is that they may all be connected. We don't know that for sure right now, but again, we're working to gather that information.
And two things to keep in mind: they could be connected, but at this point, they don't believe there's any other threat to the community because these incidents, from their perspective, they don't seem random. but suspects or a suspect still on the loose tonight.
After the third body was found, police held a second press conference.
And we want to get right to Chief Eric Winstrom from Grand Rapids Police to tell us about this breaking news happening.
Say something. We are looking for the public's help. We've had a lot of support from this community coming out. They want this place to be safe. There are a lot of kids. You see them behind me. A lot of kids here. We need these kids to be safe. When someone fires a handgun, those bullets, the capability of a stray bullet is mostly incomprehensible. It can go through car doors. It can go through literally house walls. It can kill innocent children. So we really need to all come together as a community, and we're going to be out here for the foreseeable future. This is going to be again a very long process with this crime scene. We're looking forward to bringing this shooter or shooters to justice as soon as possible. So any questions, I'm happy to take them if I can answer them.
Do we have anything as far as vehicle or suspect description right now?
Right now, not that I can share with you. We have a lot of help from the community. They're giving us various information on what they saw. That does include some vehicles which were leaving the area. We're sorting through which one of those could have been victims or potential witnesses that left the area and which could be suspects. But it is important to say we have a lot of cooperation from the community. Again, just like this morning, it's broad daylight. There's a lot of people out. As you can see, there's probably over 100 people out behind me right now. A lot of are coming out because of all the police activity. But there were people out here, so many that when the officers arrived, that individuals just walked up to them and started talking to them. So we are getting a lot of information. Sifting through that will get us to the point where we can move forward with that reasonable suspicion, probable cause, getting ready to make an arrest, which I hope will come sooner than later, because this is absolutely insane. 3 murders in one day.
Do you believe these are connected?
I can't say for sure that they're connected, but the experienced police officer in me says there's a very good chance that they're connected, yeah.
Do we know at this point what this could be over?
No, my experience with this type of incident, it's going to be something very petty and something that is not comprehensible to people like the good people standing behind me. When we do have an answer, when we say that this is the reason that this young man was murdered, I don't think it's going to make sense to us. So, yeah, I'm sure that there is a reason, but it's not going to be anything that rises to the level that will make sense to those of us standing here or those community members behind me.
Earlier you said that crime was decreasing in the city, and then you also said that the neighborhood kind of felt safe among people, and neighbors said that too to us. What do you have to say to people who are now not going to sleep easy tonight?
Well, this is shocking to me. It's got to be shocking to them. I was out here for a few hours this morning, and a lot of the same people were standing behind me today. I've already had long conversations, and they're just shaking my head, walking up. They can't believe it. I can't believe this either. Crime statistically is down. That's no comfort to this young man here. Now, I will say these don't appear to be random at all. We haven't pieced together exactly how they fit together, but I don't think there's any danger to the community at large. Like I said, having said that, I do want the community, just like the police, we're going to be extra vigilant tonight moving forward until we have this offender or offenders in custody.
This homicide would make the third of today?
That's right. Yep. The third of today, and this homicide is literally, 5 or 6 doors down from one of the ones this morning.
And how long have you
never
guys
seen anything like this recently?
You have to go back. I mean, if you look back to the Dantzler incident back in, well before I got here. But 3 murders in one day is something that I haven't experienced here. I hope to never experience again.
What can you say, can you tell us anything about the age of the victim? Is it an older person, younger?
So far, the 2 this morning, and we haven't notified their families yet. We have identified the man and woman who were killed this morning. They are adults, but they're young adults. Their lives were cut out much too young in their lives, and I think that that's going to be what we see with this young man here. He does look like he's most likely an adult, but less than half my age likely.
Can you confirm if the 2 found dead earlier were shot?
Well, we're not to that point now yet. That answer is going to come from the medical examiner, and we haven't received that information yet.
Seeing the circumstances of earlier situation, now this shooting, are you guys going to be staying out longer than you did before, or is it going to be that standard 3 hours?
You'll see police out here for a very long time today. Yeah, we're going to be processing the scene, but we're expanding our search for example, video evidence. We're going to have detectives knocking on any door that'll answer the door, especially if there's a camera. We're going to be making those connections, getting that evidence. If the offenders are in the car, which we have reasons to suspect that there was a vehicle involved, we will follow that car as far as we can, as far as looking at stores, looking at residences, anywhere that there's a city camera. Wherever we can find that information, if it's miles and miles away, we will be finding that evidence and bringing it in. This is too important to us not to go as far as we can.
And there's still a lot of unanswered questions right now. You see a lot of neighbors outside on their porches. Talk about the importance of, if you see something, know anything, to say something to help you guys out.
All the neighbors that I talked to today, they want to be safe. They want better for this community. There is a strong sense of community here. Neighbors are out on the sidewalk talking together this afternoon. A lot of them were grieving together. This is not something that they want to say, and part of that, making sure, is you don't tolerate this sort of violence in your neighborhood, and they're not. They're outraged about it. I'm outraged about it, and it's that outrage, the tenacity to make sure that we keep doing what's right, whether it's the police department holding these individuals accountable, the rest of the community working on issues with root causes, with our youth. All the things together, we can get to the point, but we never want to be the city where we tolerate this and move on. This is absolutely outrageous.
And to see 3 shootings, or 3 homicides, I guess we don't know if the first 2 were in fact shootings, in broad daylight. Talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely shocking. And you see this more and more since 2020, since the pandemic, seriously, when you could see a grown adult walking down the street on a nice warm day with a face mask, and it no longer be a sign of criminal activity. Now, since then, we've seen more and more criminal acts in broad daylight because individuals wear masks more often, and we need to get away from that being the normal, especially in the city of Grand Rapids.
If someone's watching this who may know something, what would you want to say to them?
Come forward if it's the right thing to do. We now have 3 individuals who lost their lives for at least what I consider now, and likely what I'll consider when I find out the answer, for no reason whatsoever. 3 individuals who had a long life ahead of them, who have lost their lives. So come forward because it's the right thing to do. And then if you don't want to come forward to the police department by calling 911, by calling the main number to the police department, go through Silent Observer. You can call anonymously, you can text anonymously, you can go on a website and submit an electronic tip anonymously. There's no reason not to do the right thing and come forward. It's going to make the city a better place, a safer place for the children behind me and for everybody else. So come forward with that information if you have it.
And we had a pretty heavy police presence here already. How was something like that able to happen so close and so quickly?
Yes, it's to the point where, and the neighbors were talking, we had a camera here earlier in the year, and they were asking if we could bring that trailer camera back, and that's a possibility. But we had officers here for hours this afternoon, but it was a busy day. There's a lot of activity at schools, in different places, auto accidents, and because there doesn't seem to be a police officer that was right there at that specific time, the offender or offenders took that opportunity to commit a heinous crime in nearly the exact same place that the same crime was committed earlier in the day.
And have you found a gun or any type of weapon at this time, or bullet casing?
The only thing I'm able to say about the forensic evidence, because you could see it if you were here earlier, there are numerous shell casings on the street. Of course, every one of those is valuable forensic evidence towards us, so that's huge. It also helps us identify what type of gun, the size of the gun, and that's certainly a step in the right direction as far as following it. But further evidence, if we've recovered weapons, things like that, I'm not ready to get into at this time.
And are those just for this situation, or also for the one earlier as well?
That's right. That is for this situation. We did collect a lot of evidence on the earlier scene, but I'm not ready to make those facts public at this time.
And obviously the investigation is ongoing, but do you think that this shooting may be retaliation for the first shooting?
It very well could be. I'm not ready to say that, but I think it's probably a stretch to think that a murder that literally happened a stone's throw from a very violent murder earlier in the day isn't related. So the experienced investigator in me says that it's most likely related, but it's possible it isn't, but I'm guessing it is. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. And I hope to thank you for getting the message out there that we need the help, and hope to update you soon with good news as soon as possible. Thank you. Yep.
Later that same day, police obtained surveillance video from a homeowner near where the woman's body was found, who claimed showed the woman's body being pushed out of a vehicle onto the street.
A homeowner near where the woman was discovered caught this video on her home security system. She believes it shows the woman's body being thrown from a vehicle.
So police began searching for the vehicle in the video. And around 7 p.m., they found it, parked nearly 3 miles away from the crime scenes. They haven't released any information about the vehicle since it was reported that they located it, but a news outlet reported that it was registered to 20-year-old Anaya Rodriguez, the woman found deceased in the street.
You have an incident where you think the offender either arrived or departed in a motor vehicle. There are so many cameras across the country, really, that it gives you a path as an investigator to seek out many opportunities.
Eventually, they find this around 8 p.m. Monday evening on Sherman, a few miles north of Horton. A vehicle police say is connected to the killings. Secretary of State records show it registered to Anaya Rodriguez.
A lot of work for our forensic investigators, a lot of work for the detectives, so there's so many moving parts to this.
Then police released the names of the 3 victims: 20-year-old Anaya Rodriguez, 19-year-old Malik Eubanks, the father of the toddler who was found a mile away from where he was found, and 32-year-old Daryl Yarber. So, if what the news reported is accurate, that the vehicle seen on camera belonged to Rodriguez, then it appears that her vehicle was used at some point by her killer to escape the scene, if not to dispose of both bodies and the toddler entirely. And if that's the case, then that explains why police haven't sent out a description of the suspect's vehicle, because there wasn't one. So, the killer got her car somehow. Either she knew her killer, or she was carjacked, or something else horrible like that. The day after the mysterious murders, police held a third and final press conference to update the public about their investigation, knowing the people in the community were on edge and desperately wanting more information. But, other than confirming that the toddler was found, they didn't have much more information to share.
Whenever you guys are.
Okay, so today we're here to get more updates on the violence we saw yesterday. There was a release that was just released to all of us. Can you talk about what's in that release?
Yeah, well, we have the results from the medical examiner's report, first of all, and that is that all 3 individuals were killed by firearms. We also have identified all 3 individuals. We did that late last night, but wanted to make sure that before we release that information to the public, that we were able to contact all the family members and loved ones so that they heard it from us and not online or not through rumors. So essentially we're naming the 3 victims. Also, what we did in the press release is we're confirming the fact that there was a 2-month, 11-year-old child that was found about a mile away from the scene, but it was just moments after we received the call for the individuals that had been murdered, the 2 individuals murdered and left on the roadway. We received a call for a young child left alone, and officers arrived there, and there was a little boy just shy of 3 years old, covered in blood, and of course our instinct was that it could be related, and it is related. He's a child of Mr. Eubanks, one of the victims from the first incident.
And is that child injured? How is that child doing?
Fortunately, well, physically the child is doing very well. We reunited the child with his mother, physically doing well. You know, at that age, less than 3 years old, we're not going to get that much information out of him, but I'm sure that he will likely live with the impacts of the trauma, because although we don't have all the information at this time, the fact that his father was killed with a firearm, the fact that he had blood on him, indicates that most likely he was there when one or both of the original murders was committed. So I do feel, obviously, my heart goes out to the family of all 3 individuals, and then this little child who not only lost his father but had to witness this act most likely. It's got to be devastating.
Is there any way you can confirm confirm at this point the two individuals that were found in the street? Do you know if they were shot in the street, or there was some speculation that maybe the bodies were dropped off?
Yeah, we're still putting that together, and there is a chance that they were dropped off. So what we do know is that we didn't receive a call of gunfire like we did later on in the afternoon when the third individual was killed. It was a call of individuals lying on the street that appeared to be bloody. So that usually indicates because guns make a lot of noise, and it's the middle of the day. There were a lot of people outside. There is a good chance that they were shot perhaps somewhere else altogether, or perhaps they were shot inside a motor vehicle. So all details that we are putting together, but we haven't drawn any conclusions just yet.
Can you confirm at this time if the two individuals that were found earlier in the day, were they dating, or was there any relation to each other?
They were at least friends. There could have been a dating relationship. I don't know that we've established that, but we know that they were friends. You know, they were voluntarily together. Their families knew that they spent a lot of time together, so it makes sense that they would have been in a vehicle together.
And we also had gotten mentioned that there was a Jeep that was found, or a vehicle at least. Does that vehicle belong to any of the victims?
Well, we're not going to say who that vehicle belongs to at this time. We did about 7:30, 8 o'clock last night. We located a vehicle that had been in the area of at least one of these murders, and we were out looking for it. We did locate it last night. We did take possession of that vehicle. We towed it to get processed by our forensics team, and we're keeping most of the facts related to that Jeep not public at this time.
Okay, but you can confirm it may be.
It was something very much that we were interested in getting a hold of that Jeep, because we did think that there was a strong probability that it was involved in either one or both of these murders. And officers just on regular patrol spotted it last evening and took possession of it. They towed it for processing.
So you can't confirm that it was owned by one of the victims?
No.
Okay. Now that more facts are coming out, and especially the one about the child, how devastating is it to know that the more that this story unfolds, the more that there are these tragic facts connected in the situation?
Yeah, devastating is a perfect word for it. And the impact, we lost 3 young people. Those 3 young people have loved ones. At least one of them was a father. Absolutely devastating. And the fact that they were so young, I think 19 and 20, just the lives cut way too short. And I'm quite certain that when we figure out what the reason is, what the motive is, what the supposed reason is for the killing, it's not going to help at all. That we'll all still be quite devastated by this tragedy.
At this time, can you say if these situations were connected, or is that still under investigation?
That's still, yesterday I said that I strongly believe that because of my experience as a police officer, not necessarily the facts of the case, it's very odd, very unlikely that 2 murders would happen so soon after each other in nearly the exact same place. It was on the same block, just 100 or 200 feet or so away. So oftentimes, situations like this, when there's a murder one after another in the same neighborhood, there's elements of perhaps retaliation, something like that. Here we are still putting that together. Is it possible that they're completely unrelated and this is a coincidence? Yes. In my experience, that would be very unlikely. But we deal with a lot of unlikely things in this profession, so it's still a possibility.
And speak to the fact that yesterday you talked about how crime was decreasing in the city, and I imagine now you're hoping that this does not create a trend of more crime in the city.
Well, it's one of the things about, especially when you think of a situation where 2 individuals are murdered in such a violent way. If in fact they were dumped, I mean, there's a lot of consideration in that they could have been kidnapped. It could be a carjacking. It could be some sort of ransom situation. There's all these things when you think of a body being dumped. When you think of 2 bodies being dumped, as a police officer, it expands the scope of what sort of terrible criminal elements are involved in this. And now you have 2 people that have been killed. That really expands the amount of loved ones involved, but also if there's a criminal element, if this is connected to some sort of further crime, which I'm not suggesting it is at this point, but when we talk about, say, gang killings, there's a lot of revenge gang killings, and there's a lot of violence that you have to consider a lot of chatter on social media, a lot of going back and forth. As you probably remember, a few days ago, we have a 7-year-old that was shot. Now, that was a stray bullet, but that was our investigation so far says that a lot of that could have been driven by social media back and forth. And so if there is an element of gang activity associated with something like this, and there are 2 individuals that were killed, the fear of retaliatory shootings and this becoming sort of a cycle of one group seeking revenge on another group and then going back and forth, and you're talking about many people being shot. So that's why when you have murders so close in time and so close in geography, that's one of the things that we consider in examining. Is this case of revenge? Is it the same offender that's come back to seek further violence? Is it associates of the victims seeking revenge? All these things that you have to look at. So it definitely, as a police officer, it gives you a lot more to think about.
And I'm just looking at my notes, but just to make sure that I am hitting everything, one thing I do want to ask is, going back to the vehicle, was there anything in particular that you guys found in that vehicle that's connected to this?
Well, we're not ready to talk about specifics of what we found in the vehicle, but I tell you, when you look at the murder yesterday, the first murder, you have 2 specific crime scenes where the bodies were located. You then have an additional crime scene where the young man was likely dropped off. Then you have, hours later, a whole other murder where there's a large crime scene there with a number of shell casings there, lots of witnesses on the street. Then you have the vehicle, which was located someplace else. So there is so much forensic evidence possibilities at each and every one of those locations. And where did the vehicle travel? Did someone get out of the vehicle at a store where there could be a video camera, something like that? It really just expands the work of the detectives and the more they're looking at. So specifically, were we looking for anything in the vehicle? We're looking to process it completely. If there's a firearm in there, if there's a weapon in there, of course we're interested in that. But that's not where it ends for the vehicles. We want so many different things that could be found in and about that vehicle that could be the proverbial smoking gun in a case like this.
And talking about the neighbors in that neighborhood, yesterday you said that a lot of them were coming out saying we want to help. How did that go? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it definitely was a different feel than it was in Burton Heights, even as early as a year or so ago, where there's a lot of animosity, a lot of conflict with the police. There was over 100 people out there total. I spoke to many, many people, and it was a feeling of frustration, a feeling of sadness, a feeling of anger. But they have high expectations for their neighborhood. We have high expectations for their neighborhood, and they're not willing to settle. They're not willing to say that this is to be expected here. This is just how it is in this area, and we just have to live with it. They have taken the exact opposite approach. They say, nope, this is absolutely unacceptable. This is not what this neighborhood's about. We're not going to stand for this. And they were out there for, I think, as long as I was out there processing the scene. I don't know, it could have been 4 hours for the second one. There were still dozens and dozens of neighbors out there just saying, this is unacceptable. What can we do to help? And a lot of that is, well, tell us, did you hear something? Did you see something? Are you friends with somebody that maybe is reluctant to come to the police, but they'll talk to you and you can relay that information? Do you have doorbell cameras on your house, et cetera? And so the fact that that whole neighborhood showed yesterday that they're not going to tolerate violence. They want a safe place for themselves. They want a safe place for the children in that neighborhood. That was really great to see, because I think once you have the whole neighborhood saying this is not the place for violence, I think that's when you're really going to see safety improve. And I'd love for every neighborhood in the city to be like that.
Awesome. Those are all the questions I have. Is there anything I didn't ask that you feel is important?
Well, just important, number one, to say thank you for coming out. We have 3 lives that were lost, so getting the media attention is important to us, because if there is someone that has information, I want them to feel comfortable about coming forward. If they don't want to come forward to the police, go anonymously through Silent Observer. You can do it via telephone, online, you can text the information. But it is important, and we know there's a lot of witnesses out there with information, and hopefully we'll get that information to bring closure, bring justice to these families as fast as we can.
I'm sorry, one more quick question.
Sure.
We were out there earlier and we saw that there were still officers patrolling the area.
Yeah.
How long do you expect that to last?
Well, you're going to see an enhanced presence down there until we have justice for these people. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.
And since that last press conference, nothing. No more information has been released. No more details given. No suspect description. No suspect vehicle description. Whether police have found the connection between these murders yet is still unknown, but the families of the victims have to wonder why we aren't hearing anything else, as are the rest of us following this tragic case. People in the community have to be terrified, not knowing what happened, if the killings were random, or if there will be more to come. And if police haven't found any connection between the victims, they may be waiting as well. If they're dealing with a serial killer, they're well aware that a period of time will likely take place before another murder occurs. It's just odd that there's been no information about a possible suspect or suspect vehicle days after the murders. And whoever killed the first two victims had no problem returning to the scene where one of the first bodies was left to kill again.
We had officers here for hours this afternoon, but it was a busy day. There's a lot of activity at schools, in different places, auto accidents, and because there doesn't seem to be a police officer that was right there at that specific time, the offender or offenders took that opportunity to commit a heinous crime in nearly the exact same place that the same crime was committed earlier in the day.
And just hours after the first bodies were discovered. As if the killer went on a rampage and is now in a cooling off period. Hopefully, police have so much more information than they are sharing out to the public, and they know that they don't have a serial killer on their hands. But it's also odd that they know people in the community are scared, and they're offering no more information to calm their fears, other than to say that they don't believe the community at large is in any sort of danger. And yet, the police chief said that after the first two bodies were found, but another murder occurred just hours later. And a precious toddler was abandoned alone and could have been hurt or killed after witnessing his father's murder. Now it's as if he doesn't know what to say. Now, maybe all they can do is wait. I hope that's not the case. I pray the community is safe, and whoever did this will be caught before they can harm anybody else. As always, I want to thank you all so very much for watching, and I also want to share something interesting with you that I found if you're interested in learning about the minds of serial killers. A touring masterclass called The Psychology of Serial Killers is starting in February 2024, and it will be going to a number of cities across the country. The speaker is Dr. Rachel Tolles, who is a clinical psychologist and criminal expert, and she'll be holding master classes about the deep, dark psychology behind what serial killers do and why they do it, and why there's such a fascination with them. If you're interested in learning more or getting tickets, the website to go to is psychologyofserialkillers.com. Dr. Rachel Tolles also has a YouTube channel called Dr. Rachel Tolles if you want to check her out. Just a bit of information I thought I'd share with you, in case somebody is interested. I know I am. Stay safe out there. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on my next video.